It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. There's a lot we could discuss, but I think what I really want to focus on is some of the economic issues, the bigger picture issues. And, obviously inflation is we're having generational inflation. The latest number is 7.9% year over year, which are the highest recorded since 1982, which was the tail end of the 1970s. But the not so dirty secret is the government counts the CPI differently than they did in the 1970s, and as many people know, they don't include fuel or food. Today like they did back then, which are two of the biggest expenses for the average American. Many economists, experts estimate that if a government actually counted the CPI and inflation today like they did back in the 1970s, we'd be well in the double digits, which would be the highest in the history that anybody alive has experienced. This is generational inflation. That's what we're dealing with. Why are we here? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest ones, of course, has to do with energy. Gas, fuel, has the biggest impact on the cost of goods and services out there, because everything, whether it's food or products or whatever it is transported by, whatever it is, trucks, rail, whatever it is, right? So just about everything, the price of something, was affected by energy prices. Or more directly, the cost of energy. And for the most part, that's, oil. Because everything, again, and a lot of things are made from petroleum products. That's the thing. Pretty much anything plastic is oil is a big component. And how much stuff do we deal with that has plastic or is in a plastic container? I mean, my gosh, that's just about everything you can think of, okay? So it increases the costs of just about everything. Now, we're dealing with a White House, like it states here. They say, they'll say one thing on one hand, but on the other, they do entirely different. I mean, let's say, we're doing everything we can to reduce oil prices, and lately they've been trying to blame it on Putin, which is a joke because gas prices have been increasing for almost a year, and Putin's, the Ukraine war started a few weeks ago. Okay, so it's just a joke. It's a laugh out loud type of revisionist history. It's a joke. I mean, it's just another excuse. Okay, but the reality is, they say on one hand they're doing everything on the table to reduce gas prices, except they have no plans to allow Keystone Pipeline or other pipelines or drilling allowing drilling permits or anything like that in the U.S. Now, experts tell us that we have something like 100-year supply of oil within our own borders. That's what we know of now with our current technology. So it's not like we don't have the oil, the resource. Now, they're not willing to allow us to drill for it. And I was having a discussion/argument with a client of mine very recently who is very, very much a supporter of green energy and all that. And you hear their solutions. They'll say, well, one of the other things they'll say is, well, if White House says restarting the Keystone Pipeline won't address today's problems. It'll take months, if not a year or two, to really make a difference. And then the next breath, they talk about what we need to do is create green energy, which, folks, will take years, if not decades, to be online, fully, ready for prime time, because the technology's not there. I'm not against green energy, don't get me wrong. And we should use it whenever possible or whenever it makes economic sense. But the technology is not there yet for it to run prime time. Oil, fuel is far, far more efficient. Okay? And the not so dirty secret about green energy is a lot of that requires batteries, which is very, very environmentally unfriendly to mine those minerals to create those batteries. So it's not any more environmentally friendly. But the other part that really drives me nuts, and then it kind of gets to the point I'm going to make today, is they're okay with buying oil from other countries, formerly Russia, the Middle East. They talk about wanting to get oil from Venezuela, for example. In other words, countries that, for the most part, hate our guts. They're our enemies. But if you truly are an environmentalist and you want green energy, where is oil drilled more environmentally friendly? Typically inside the U.S., or in places like Russia, Venezuela, the Middle East, or other places where there are little or no rules, right? In other words, if you are truly an environmentalist and you recognize that there is a need for energy, okay, people like to heat their homes, okay? They like to cool their homes in the summer and heat them in the winter. We like to drive or go places, and it takes energy to transport, okay? Unless you want to dramatically change our lifestyle, which most people don't want to do, okay, green energy is just not ready for prime time. I believe it will be at some point when the technology comes into place. What's so infuriating, I think, is how we've gotten a group of leaders who are in the government and such, and this is pretty much worldwide, or at least in the Western world, who have made this their agenda. I mean, a great example. They're supposed to be our representatives, right? They're supposed to represent us in the best interests of their constituents. But they are so blinded by this agenda that nothing else matters. They just blindly, just doggedly pursue this. And a perfect example, John Kerry. This was on March 9th. John Kerry, Ukraine crisis is bad, but wait till you see the flood of climate refugees. It's like, are you kidding me? People are literally getting killed in war now and are trying to escape that. That's why they're leaving Ukraine. I don't blame them. But they're getting shot at right now. But he's claiming, well, that crisis is a problem, but the climate change refugee will be far worse. Okay? Here's the thing that they don't want to say. Climate change happens incrementally over decades, if not centuries. It's a very, very slow process. War is immediate and now. The two there's no comparison. And for somebody to even try to link the two and try to even claim that climate change refugees would be worse, it's so disconnected to reality than war and people getting shot at and killed now in the immediate, or people trying to escape. It's mind-boggling, the disconnect. But again, it's not about facts or truth or anything. It's about an agenda. They're wanting to accomplish something, and they're so driven. It's like the facts don't matter, right? It's just all about the agenda because nothing else matters, okay? Now, I've talked about this so many times. We have a group of leaders, unfortunately many of them in charge now, that want this whole energy crisis, the high price, gas prices and all that, in their minds a good thing. And what do I mean by that? Well, they've said it openly. It's no secret. They've stated openly many times that if the price of gas went up, increased, that's why they shut down the pipeline, folks. That's why they are restricting or haven't allowed any new oil leases, I think, in the past year since Biden's taken office. I mean, that's ridiculous. They're just stopped all drilling. And this isn't new. You shouldn't be surprised because when Biden was running for office, he stated it multiple times there would be no drilling in the U.S. of oil, which means we would be dependent on oil from other sources. But really that's not the part they care about. The part they care about is the price would go up. And if the price of oil energy went up, it would make green energy sources more affordable or more competitive. That's what it's all about. They don't really care that inflation comes, and of course that's going to, higher energy prices, again, creates inflation. You got to connect the dots, folks. They don't care that the average American, the middle class, is paying more for food and every other thing they purchase. This agenda is so important to them because they just want this green energy come hell or high water is what it boils down to. Forget, damn the torpedoes, right? It's that kind of attitude. Now remember, these are supposedly they're supposedly representatives. And that's the point that just sticks in my craw sometimes. It's like you're supposed to be representing our best interests, yet you have this agenda that you have in mind, and you're going to do this agenda no matter, damn the torpedoes. Doesn't matter what it does to people. It doesn't matter how it hurts them. It doesn't matter how much it costs them. It doesn't matter that if you have a weak energy policy, you make tyrants like Putin stronger and then allows them to fuel wars to take over Afghanistan so people get killed. Doesn't matter. Listen to Kerry. It's like, yeah, this is a problem, but imagine how how much bigger the other. So in other words, this war thing, this taking over, attacking Afghanistan. Ukraine, all those kinds of things. It's not as bad. It's bad, but it's not. Are you nuts? You have an agenda and you don't care. These are not representatives is my point. And what we need to do. And there's some on the Republican side, too. It's not just all Democrats. We got some that are on the other side. But Democrats seem to be predominantly, all for this green energy thing. Again, damn the torpedoes, right? No matter what. Doesn't matter what it does to people, how much it hurts them economically, even is one of the main causes of this war. And people get killed. Doesn't matter. Okay? Their agenda is what matters. And folks, that's sick. I'm sorry, it's evil. It's evil, it's sick, it's demented, and it's disastrous. And we need to recognize that as voters. Because here's the thing, here's their weak spot. They do have to get voted in. And we've got to start, and thankfully the polls are showing dramatic, shifts, and that's great, that's awesome. But we need to exercise our power and start voting for people, representatives, who will actually represent us and not some ideology that, just overtakes everything else, including war. Okay? That is just absolutely ludicrous in my mind. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to discuss some further things about this and some other thoughts, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're discussing inflation, the impacts it has having on people, and just some of the bigger picture stuff, and we'll discuss some things that we can do. And I went through the whole first segment without even telling people how to contact me. I make that mistake. I get on a roll, and I'm terrible. But if you want more information or want to contact me on how to take control of your money, reduce taxes, offset inflation, get positive arbitrage on your money, toll free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. So this whole thing about our representatives not representing us, that just sticks in my craw. That really, really bugs me because we have a group of folks who are in charge, many of them in charge, like who are just with green energy, are so hell-bent, damn the torpedoes attitude about we're going to go down that path no matter what. Doesn't matter what it does to the economy. Doesn't matter how it hurts people. Doesn't matter if it helped create a war and people got killed. Doesn't matter. We're going to have green energy. But the thing is, if you're going to save the environment, you got to get the whole world involved. And if you don't have China and India and Russia on board, it doesn't matter what you do. That doesn't seem to. And if I don't get it. I do get it. I guess what I'm saying is the leadership, they're just entrenched, embedded in this so much. Obviously, they gain a lot of power and money as a result. You always, like I say, you understand something, follow the money, right? They're getting, compensated, overly so, to push this agenda. You could see it with COVID and the folks that were pushing the and I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of strong feelings about COVID one way or the other, but here's the thing you can't argue with. Some of the people that promoted the vaccines the strongest looked at who their donors were. Heavily, they had big pharma, donating to their campaigns and stuff. In other words, they were just shills for big pharma, okay? That's the thing that we as voters, we as Americans, we as individuals need to come to realize. Start thinking about why someone's doing what they're doing. Another example I can give you is more recent even, is with this Ukraine war. Some of the hawks that were out there, and, again, this was on both sides, but this was primarily on the Republican side. You had people that were, basically saying we should go to war to protect Ukraine, even though we have no... It's really sad. I mean, don't get me wrong. You don't want to see one country take over another, and it's terrible. It's heartbreaking, but we have no strategic interest there. They're not our allies. We have no formal agreements with them of any kind. And they were wanting us to go to war, and in essence, with Russia, another nuclear power, if it came to nuclear war, that would be... There could be nothing more devastating just about that I can think of, except maybe a huge asteroid just taking out the planet. But it'd be about similar to that, okay? But they're pushing for war almost out the gate. And then when you start investigating some of these were Congress people and senators and all this kind of stuff. And then when you investigate who were some of their biggest political donors, it was the military-industrial complex, right? In other words, if you've got somebody pushing something, frankly, that beyond reason, what's beyond reason, maybe check into who's greasing their pockets, right? Who's putting money in their pocket? Particularly when you're talking about politicians and campaign contributions and stuff, and a lot of that's public record, thankfully. Not all of it, but a lot of it is, so you can follow it to some extent. But again, you don't even have to go that far, I don't think, these days, to really have a real strong and healthy skepticism about what any of those folks are saying or trying to say, tell us. You got to ask yourself the question of why and who's paying them to say that. And that's what's, again, goes back to what to me is so irritating. These folks supposedly are representatives, supposed to represent us, their constituents. Yet so many of them get corrupted and basically become shills for whoever's paying them the most money, whether it's to be a hawk for a war or to push a vaccine for big pharma or green energy for the green energy industry, right? Or whatever it may be, okay? And that's really sad that we've come to a point that we keep electing people like this that are not leaders. Let me give you a great example. Truman was famous for having a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." And I grew up in Missouri, not far from where he grew up. So that kind of attitude, it resonates with me. I get it. He was just a good old Missouri boy in some respects. I don't necessarily agree with everything he stood for, but, I respect that. The buck stops here. In other words, leadership has always been a situation where somebody, you take responsibility. A leader takes responsibility when things don't go right. And they get credit for when they do, things do go well, but when things don't go right, the captain goes down with the ship, right? That whole attitude. In other words, the leader is supposed to take responsibility. And I have, for over a year now, have really I've thought about this many times, of anything that I can think of that Biden has done that's been good or beneficial to this country. And I've said, or anything he's even good at. It's like, what is this guy, what in the world is he good at? And I've come, for the longest time, And I was being generous. I couldn't come up with anything, genuinely. But recently, I've actually come up with two things that I found that Biden is actually really, really good at. And one of them is not the buck stops here, but passing the buck. In other words, blaming others. And this is one of his latest ones is, the gas prices, that's Putin's fault. That's laughable. Gas prices have been increasing since he took office and shut down the Keystone Pipeline and stopped federal leases. None. No drilling in the U.S. That has caused a reduction in supply, which causes an increase in price, which is what he wants, or his administration wants. You know, they want the green energy, so make oil cost more, gas cost more. So that's one thing he's good at, is passing the buck, blaming others. Great at that, actually. That may be his greatest skill. And the other one I found that I guess is taking credit for things that he didn't do, like trying to claim we're in great economy and his State of the Union address and creating all these jobs. And in reality, his government creates no jobs. We've talked about this many times. The government takes money from people and then pays. Even if you're a government employee, it's still paid for by the people. The government has no money. Okay, government creates no jobs, no economic benefit, no benefit there. Okay. The government's a drain on the economy, not a benefit. But he was claiming all that, and the reality was the economy was shut down due to COVID, and then it got reopened, so that more jobs came available. I mean, that would have been true no matter who was there. Okay? But he's trying to take credit for it. He's like great at getting in front of the parade. Stay tuned in the next segment. I got a couple other thoughts I think you're going to really want to, that I think will be helpful going forward in navigating this environment, this economic environment we're in. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And again, we're discussing some bigger issues today economically. Inflation, obviously, one of the biggies, and some of the causes, some of the things, what to expect, what we can do. And like I said, the big picture stuff. But what I was discussing earlier was really the lack of leadership we have. As I stated in the last segment, I figured out Biden is really good at two things, and that's passing the buck. In other words, blaming other people for things, and taking credit for stuff that he didn't do. And he's really good at both of those, frankly. I haven't seen much else. And I'm being generous. And I think that's one of the big problems. The decline in leadership is striking to me. The number of folks that we have in both elected and bureaucratic positions that lack any credible experience or credible ability of any kind. There seems to be a pretty common theme in terms of they're basically there to get what they're there to get what they can get while they're there. I mean, so many people talk, Nancy Pelosi, why is she, I don't know why she keeps staying there other than she keeps making lots and lots of money, right? What's in it for her? What's in it for me, right? It seems like there's that attitude it has become the predominant attitude. And you could say that just about every elected leader, particularly, I'd say on the Democratic side for the most of them, and I'm going to say about half of the Republican side. You can say the same thing. That they're in it for themselves and not to be representatives of the people or their constituents. And, folks, when are we going to wake up and realize that most of these people are not representing us. And if they're not going to represent us, then we need to vote them out and get somebody else in that will. It's not like that I don't think it's that our country lacks leadership. I don't think it lacks good quality people. I just think we've allowed too many of these ne'er-do-wells that they figured out an easy way to get into office, an easy way to make some money and benefit themselves and their families. And, to hell with everybody else, right? And the country or anything else for that matter. We have others that are genuinely radicals. I think a lot of them in the bureaucratic side that just hate this country, this government, and everything that has to do with it, hate the middle class. And they want to see, they talk about fundamentally changing the country. Okay? I'm sorry, I'm not interested in that. I like the country the way it is. I like our government system the way it is. Not interested in changing. And that's, I think, the vast majority of Americans. Some are afraid to say it because they're concerned about losing their jobs or business or whatever. I've been fortunate, or I guess, I don't know. I didn't start this. It started out this way. I started out as a financial show, and then, like I said, when the COVID started shutting down small business, I'm a small business owner. That just rubbed me the wrong way. And I couldn't stay quiet. And I started sharing my feelings about it, and I quickly found out that there's a whole lot of other people that feel the same way. And so I was encouraged to keep sharing, and that's why I'm doing that. And I've been called the town crier now by a lot of people, and I consider that an honor. And I understood initially it was somewhat risky in terms of doing business with clients and stuff, and I could certainly lose business from folks that did not agree. But and I know that has happened, and that's fine. I understood that going in. But I think in the long run, it's actually been a benefit. And again, this wasn't intentional, or I even didn't foresee this. But now I have people that contact me that want to be clients with me because of, well, they agree. They agree with the ideas and the thoughts and the stands and the positions I take, and they say, keep it up. So as long as you all keep encourage me. Sometimes I question, is it worth it? I know there's some risk, but you all keep encouraging me. I'm going to keep sharing my thoughts and ideas and how I feel. It's just genuinely how I feel. And like I said, if you want to reach out to me, contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. You'll get to talk to me, okay? I don't pawn you off to somebody else, all right? But it's this this lack of leadership, and we've got so many people in positions of power that are just there for no other reason than they're just, in it for themselves. And that is what needs to change. And there's some things that we need to do, like one of the biggest would be term limits. Don't allow somebody to be in there and scam off the system for the rest of their lives. I mean, just ridiculous. I think if there was one mistake that I clearly see that our founding fathers they just didn't foresee this. They never saw or envisioned somebody would want to be a career politician. It was a duty. It was so looked down upon as a chore, so to speak, but a duty. They just couldn't imagine. Look, they wanted to be on their farms and stuff and with their families and all that. They couldn't imagine somebody would actually want to do that. There's a few other things we're going to talk about in the next segment, so I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're going to wrap up some thoughts today. Economically, inflation is the big thing that the average American is dealing with. And a lot of people, I get asked this question all the time. What is, how much longer, how much, how long is this going to last? How bad is it going to get? The problem we have is the number one cause of inflation is the increase in the cost of energy. Because oil is what is used by for the vast majority of situations to transport goods and services, food. I'll give you another example. Russia is one of the largest producers of fertilizer in the world. And our farmers need fertilizer to grow their crops. Well, Russia said they're going to stop exporting fertilizer for the undetermined future. Okay, what's that going to do to the fertilizer prices? I mean, they're not the only producer, but if you take the largest producer offline, what do the prices do? Like I heard a thing on a farmer. He's saying he needed 200 pounds of potash or something like that to grow an acre of corn. I think don't quote me on this, but it was something to that effect. And and he's talked about his costs for those fertilizers from last year were triple already, and that's before Russia stated they were going to take it offline, their production. if the cost of raising the food that we eat, what the stuff farmers need, like fertilizer, triples, what's that going to do to the cost of food, right? And then the cost of the gas and the oil and everything else to transport that food to wherever it needs to be is higher. This inflation scenario in large part has been caused by the current administration, and much of it is intentional. See, and that's my opinion that I've come up with. For a long time, and I was trying to give a lot of them the benefit of the doubt, and I kept asking myself, is this intentional? Or is it just, are they just that out of touch? Or are they just clueless? It seems like it's got to be one of those. So you're either like way out of touch, you don't know what's going on, or you're just stupid, okay, just plain stupid, or this is intentional. You're doing this on purpose. And I've come to the conclusion it's on purpose. And here's my evidence, and I think it's pretty strong. I've thought back to all the different actions the Biden administration has taken over the past year or so. And I've thought about what have they done that's beneficial to the U.S., and I mean really the people, the average American. Average, hardworking American who's a average good citizen. They work, they work hard, they raise their family, they pay their taxes, right? The backbone of America. And I just can't think of one thing they've done that's benefited the average American. See, and here's my evidence of why it's intentional. Look, if you were just stupid and you were just doing things to do things, but you're just you're stupid or you're clueless, you're so out of touch, you don't know what's going on, you would do some things sometimes just by accident that would be good, right? By accident. You weren't planning on it. It's just, you're too stupid or clueless to know otherwise. So sometimes accidentally you're going to do a good thing. They haven't done that. In fact, like I said, a great example of this whole energy thing. When Biden was running as a candidate back in 2019 and 2020, he's on video stating that he was going to stop oil drilling in the U.S., stop leases, and stop pipelines. What has he done? See, we shouldn't be surprised. And why is he doing it? Because the reason why, you have to ask yourself the question. By causing the price of oil, by reducing production, you increase basic supply and demand, you increase the cost, and if you increase the cost of oil high enough, the hope was the folks that are promoting green energy, that then it would become more competitive and people would use it. Now, again, I go back to my original question I was discussing a segment or two ago. Is that being a representative representing the people, what the people want, or is that just following your own agenda, irregardless of what the people want, irregardless if it causes increased fuel prices, irregardless if it causes inflation, which hurts the average American, and in fact hurts poorer people more than the most of all, but it hurts people economically. It creates a situation where you're not energy independent anymore, so you have to purchase energy, more of it, from bad characters like Putin, which puts more money in his pocket, which gives him more power and emboldens him to invade a country and people get killed. See, that's the effects of those kinds of actions and decisions. I was having this discussion / argument. I mentioned this earlier with one of my clients, longtime clients. And he said, well, how much? And, I said, we should be. He was arguing with me about being energy independent. I said, it's a matter of national security. A country needs energy to operate. That's the world we live in. I mean, we're not 100 years ago or 200 years ago where we're riding horses and buggies. Okay, we've evolved from that. That's why I keep saying progressives are not progressives. They're actually regressives. They would like to see us drive less, travel less. Geez, they probably love horses and buggies again. You know what I'm saying? My point, they want us to use less energy, right? That's regressing backwards, right? But his argument was, well, how much are we really importing from Russia? And I said about 5%, somewhere between 5 and 10% of our total. How much is that? I said, well, from what I've seen and read, it's somewhere between 4 and 900,000 barrels a day. Well, that's not that much. I said at $100 a barrel, that's billions of dollars, which is helping fund his ability to attack Ukraine. And he looked at me and he didn't have a response. In other words, he was, I just want green energy. I said, I understand. I'm not negative to green energy myself, but it's not ready for prime time. He's like, well, we need to invest more into it. I said, fine. I have no problem with that, but why are we being forced, we the taxpayer? Because why is the government investing in it? The government has no money, so therefore where's the money coming from that they're using? It's from us, the taxpayer, right? Why are we being forced to invest in a technology that's not ready yet? Eventually it will be. I think it will be. Probably years, maybe decades from now, and that's fine. But, our government wasn't heavily involved in the technology to create cars, for example, or many, many other technology. Look at the medical community, the medical field, for example. Look at the advances in technology that have occurred over the decades that have increased the lifespan, right, of people. I mean, the stuff that they can do medically today is incredible than 50 years ago, right? And a lot of that's because increased advanced technologies. Did the government fund all that kind of stuff? No, there was a demand. It's called supply and demand. Let the free market, let the economy. If there's a demand, if there's a company come out and make green energy solar panels, for example, or windmills economically efficient because of upgraded, increased technology, they'll take over the market. In other words, we don't have to spend all our money and put ourselves in debt and show weakness to bad characters out there. It'll happen when it's ready. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen. And we have 100-year supply, they tell us, of oil in our own borders, and that's what we know of now with our current technology. In other words, we've got 100 years to figure this out. And it's probably more than that because more advanced technology will give us access to more oil. And by the way, the last part of that is, people say, I don't want us drilling oil. Well, would you rather us, if you're truly an environmentalist, and this is where I think I really get them, again, get somebody to think. If you're truly an environmentalist, would you rather see oil drilled in the U.S. or in Russia or Iran or Venezuela? Where is it going to be clean? Where is it generally going to be cleaner and more, environmentally friendly? See, if you don't, they don't think. A lot of these people that, and he thanked me for the discussion afterwards. But he goes, don't think about it. You got me to think about some stuff. He just touting the stuff about we need to invest more in green energy. Well, why are these leaders touting this constantly? Who is lining their pockets? Who's paying them to do this? Just like we had people that were getting paid to push the vaccines by Big Pharma. Just like we had people that were getting paid by the military-industrial complex to push war, getting us more involved in the Ukraine war, okay? Where are they getting the money? I mean, who's paying them? You see what I'm trying to say? So again, let's focus on candidates who support things like term limits so somebody can't get up into Washington and make a career out of it and get corrupted. Human beings, naturally, we're a combination of the books we read and the people we hang out with. And if you're hanging around with a bunch of basically corrupt individuals who are in it for themselves and are getting paid by these big companies, corporations, or whatever it is, industry, it's hard to resist. And if you're there too long, you're probably going to succumb to it at some degree or some point, right? So don't allow them to be there too long. We need folks that will support term limits. We need a constitutional amendment for term limits for Congress. We need a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget amendment because, again, to spend the kind of money that's been spent, the next generations are going to be stuck with this bill. And when we have crisis like we do now, and you have a huge debt on top of it, it makes it so much harder to get through and get out of. If we had been debt-free or close to it as a country, going into this inflation, going into all these crises, it wouldn't be so bad. It wouldn't be so significant. I mean, one of the reasons why the Fed has kept the interest rate so low for so long is because the debt was so high, and the interest payments on the debt would kill the Treasury, okay? Well, it's only gotten worse. And if they do raise rates, and they're going to be forced to, they're talking about, it's going to eat a bigger and bigger part of the GDP, and we're going to be a weaker and weaker country financially because we're carrying debt. And that's just a bad idea all around, period, all the time, pretty much. The only time you should have any debt is when you needed to go into debt to protect yourself as a country, like war, like Britain did when they were under attack in World War II. Their survival was threatened, okay? That's when you go into debt. Outside of that, no other reason to that I can see. So the term limits, balanced budget amendment, and then the last one is we just need to see a reduction of the federal power, states' rights, in other words. So less bureaucracy, more constitutionalism. In other words, and I mentioned this to the same gentleman, and he goes, but then you'd have, well, what if you had I said, it's none of the, education's a great example I used. There should not be a national department of education. In fact, this is what drives me nuts. There's a cabinet level position. It's the Department of Education, and it was and the reason is because it was a part of the campaign promise deal. The teachers union supported Carter; he would give him a cabinet position. So Carter instituted that, and it was a campaign promise from Carter. Why is it still there? Why is that position still there? Why is that department still there? Because education is the responsibility of the states. And that's in the Constitution. It's called enumerated rights. Read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's not that hard of a read. It doesn't take that long. And it states very clearly what the rights, what the federal government is supposed to do. And then it states very clearly all other rights are reserved for the states or the people. And he said, well, couldn't argue with that, but then he said, well, what if, some states did it better than others? I said, you have 50 states, some are going to do it better than others. And hopefully the ones that aren't doing it as well will learn from the others. That's our system. But to try to nationalize it, you can't tell me it's better. As a country, we spend more money on education than just about anybody else and get some of the worst results worldwide. Nobody can argue with that. It's because there's too much power and corruption. Too much concentrated power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, term limits, balanced budget amendment, states' rights. We need to find candidates and people that are willing to support that, and I think we have a generational opportunity to accomplish much of that. If you want to contact me to learn how to reduce your taxes, take control of your money, offset inflation, get positive arbitrage, contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422. or yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.